When you're writing a song with the material that we discussed, you have 6 chords from a major key at your disposal, plus their inversions, 3 of each. And if you choose to insert some 4-note chords, like dominant 7th, minor 7th, and major 7th chords, and maybe throw in a power chord, you have a lot to choose from. Now, this can become baffling at some point. Where does the song want to go? If you already have a melody, you could harmonize it and see which way the chord progression goes. We'll talk about harmonizing a melody in a future chapter. If you have a nice chord groove going, it's a good thing to experiment with different chord orders in your progression. To get a grip on what chord order can do for you, let's work with a simple 4-bar example in the key of D major. This is the groove I came up with. 1, 2, 3, 4. The chords in this key are D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, and B minor. We'll leave out inversions, 4-note chords, and so on for now, and we won't dig into a lot of different chord shapes for the individual chords, just open string chords. Now, in a general sense, you can say that a lot of songs start on the tonic chord, and almost all of them end on it. Let's start with just the 3 major chords on the 1st, 4th, and 5th degree. In this case, the D major, the G major, and the A major. If we start and end a 4-bar progression in D, we can stick the 4 and 5 chords in there in the 2nd and 3rd bar. We could end up with this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm playing the chord D, G, to A, to D, all major chords. Now this is a typical closed chord progression. It starts and ends on the D, and the chord progression at the end of the section is the strongest progression we know, a 5-1 progression from A major to D major. On that last D chord, it feels like we could end the song and go home. The song, or this section of the song, is closed. Now even the simplest thing of turning the G major and E major chord in bars 2 and 3 around makes that closed feeling a little bit less. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you want to give the listener some solid ground beneath their feet, start on the 1 chord and end the section on it. As we've said before, there are other elements that contribute to this closed and openness feeling, like the melody and the rhythm. Even with these 3 chords, you can completely change the vibe of the progression by ending or beginning the progression on a different chord. Listen to this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm playing a D major to a G major to a D major to an A major. We're starting at home base and come back in bar 3 after a brief visit to the 4-chord G. We're ending on the 5-chord A, and the section definitely feels open. We need to continue to the next section or close it off by, for instance, playing another D chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, just because we're playing this in a folky style, it doesn't mean that this doesn't work for other styles like rock or jazz. This is the underlying musical language for all styles. Even played on a distorted electric guitar in a rock groove, the vibe would still be exactly the same. Ending the progression on the 4-chord G also keeps some momentum going. You still want to continue after the last chord of the section. 1, 2, 3, 4. The section feels open. We want to continue. But somehow it feels that you can't stop immediately by just sticking an ending chord D on it. See how this feels. 1, 2, 3, 4. It still feels like there's life in the progression. This is a function of the asymmetry of the progression. We have a pattern of 4 bars and then 1 bar. 4, 1. So not only do harmony, melody, and rhythm influence this open or closed feeling, so does the form of the progression. Is there some pattern that your ear recognizes, and where is there a natural ending point in the groove? Symmetry and asymmetry of a chord progression have an influence on this feeling. We'll get to that in a future lesson. It makes more sense for the progression to move on, for instance like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. This last ending feels more satisfying. Now it feels like we're done. Let's move on and look at a progression that does not start on the 1 chord D major. 1, 2, 3, 4. The chords I played were a G, to an A, to a G, and ending on the D major. We're not starting at home bass, although when our ear is fresh, meaning we're not influenced by chords we've heard in previous sections, we can't immediately establish home bass. The progression could have been in the key of G. Now if we play the same example in the key of C, you'll hear this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now at first we don't know that we're in C, because the only thing that we hear is the F chord. Now once the G chord gets around, your ear immediately establishes the most likely home bass chord, which is C major. This is because of the most common key that has an F major and a G major chord in common is the C major key. This progression from the 4 to the 5 chord, back to the 4, and ending on the 1 chord, feels closed. The song could end there. We got to this point starting out on the 4 chord F, and once the ear establishes that this is indeed not a 1 chord, it really feels like we're on the move. Now, depending on the lyrics you develop or the melody that you've written, you could use this technique of starting on a 4 chord or on a 5 chord or any other chord of the key that's not the 1 to strengthen the mood or to counter it. Or how about this one? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're left in the dark concerning the actual key we're in for the first 3 bars. It could be G, because we're starting out on a G chord, and even on the 2nd bar we don't know a thing. The D chord is the 5 chord of G, so it's a 1-5 progression. But if D is the 1 chord, we're starting off on a 4 chord, the G, going to the 1 chord, the D. In bar 3 there's another 4 chord, and at bar 4 we now know for sure that we're in D because we're playing the 5 chord of D, which is an A. So the progression would be 4, 1, 4, 5. It starts open and has momentum, plus it ends open. We want to continue. Extra key information can be gotten from the melody. If I play this example with a hint of a melody on the top strings, you'll be able to pick up the intended key easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. first chord is a G. We know nothing yet, but the second chord has a C-sharp melody in it. Now the G major scale doesn't have a C-sharp note. It has a C. Now because of that C, which is the raised fourth in the key of G, the chord has some tension. Your ear immediately says, we're on the move to another chord, and the D chord that you land on in bar 2 confirms that notion. We feel like we're back home when we land on that second bar D chord, and that's because the D major scale, of which the D major chord is the one chord, does contain a C sharp. Plus all the other notes that we've just heard as part of the G chords and the D chords. The D major key has D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. The progression is heard as a 4-1. It had momentum, and we moved home. If we were to play the G chord with a different melody on top containing a C note, we would hear the D chord in bar 2 as the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. The C note, here played on the second string, is part of the G major scale. So there's your C. And the four notes that we hear in the first bar, so the G, the B, the D, and the C, all suggest the G major scale. This notion is confirmed once we land on the D major chord in bar 2, which is heard as the 5 chord. The notes that your ear picks up in bar 2 are the D, the F sharp, and the A. The two notes, the F sharp and the A, are added to the four notes that you've already heard, making for G, A, B, C, D, and F sharp, which is an almost complete G major scale. This has got to be a progression in G. And the chords that I played were a G major chord, which is a 1 chord, going to a 5 chord D major. The melody guides your ear to the key when the chord doesn't hand out that information immediately. Playing with this information at the beginning of a song is a great way to suggest movement or establish home base really solid.